Hi, my name is Nur Diyana Shofry, and this is my SK700 Understanding Employability oral presentation. The job of the person I interviewed for this presentation is of a counselor, more specifically the university counselor. One of the big things that I learned about the job of a counselor is that there's not only one specific career path to become a counselor, and that many counselors come from different career paths and fields to become a counselor. So far, I have done a couple work experience where I shadowed counselors as well as psychologists. As before my work experience, I believed that I wanted to become only a psychologist rather than a counselor. But after doing my work experience where I shadowed some clinical psychologists but also some community psychologists, I realized that I enjoyed my time with the community psychologists the most, as they're not only like working with patients as counselors, but they also help go to different schools and promote and destigmatize mental health, which I think is really important. So this also helped me realize the importance of work experience. If I didn't do my work experience, I would have never realized that I might actually want to be something other than a psychologist. This module asked me to interview a person who works in the field I am interested in, and since one of the key characteristics of a community psychologist, from what I learned in my hometown when I did the work experience at community psychology, was that they are also counselors, and so I decided to interview a counselor, and so I emailed the university's counselor, and I interviewed Jo Wilson, who works for the university. Who is Jo Wilson? Specifically, she is the head of the student well-being of University of Essex, and her specific job is of a manager. But when we interviewed her, she gave answers of what a counselor would have given rather than a manager. So a typical day for a counselor is that they would have caseloads of students that they would have appointments with, and they would write up notes about the students and talk to their colleagues about the students, and they would do one-on-one sessions with the students. Not only do they do like counseling, but they also do assessments of the students. For example, if they have some sort of learning disability, they would assess them and all that. They only offer short-time counseling, and this was one of the things that when we asked Jo what was one of the things that she didn't like about the job, was that they only offer short-term counseling. And so because of this, she knows that she couldn't help some students who she knows that would need a longer time period of counseling. And so for those students, she would know that she wouldn't be able to help them, and this feeling she didn't like about the job she's in. But for most of the time, she does enjoy her job because she likes the feeling of helping students and helping students to cope with their problems and helping students to solve their problems. For when we ask her about the leadership roles that she has, she does have some leadership roles, as she is a manager, so she manages a team of 13 counselors. She also says teamwork is really important in her job, as since they're working with students who have problems, they might, if they had like a bad session with a student, they would need to rely on their colleagues to help motivate them and give them support about the student and about them as a counselor. Jo also told us how, like I said before, there's no one clear or obvious career path to get into counseling. She told us how she personally started out as a very heavy psychology-based career pathway, as she originally wanted to become a clinical psychologist. So she told us how she had a psychology degree, and she also had a work experience at a psychiatric as a nursing assistant, and she also did work experience as a psychology assistant. In terms of the quality she told us would be good for a counselor, is that you have to have an interest in people as you're working with people and you're communicating with people. So you should have a strong interest in people, but you should also be somewhat robust, which is because you need to separate your personal feelings with your professional feelings, and so you need to draw a line in that area, as you can't even you can't bring back home all the things that you learned and felt from the students, because it will be bad for your own mental health. And you should also have some empathy so you can relate with the students who are getting counseled. She also told us how having your own issues with mental health is a good way to get empathy, but you should deal with if you do have mental health problems, you should deal with that first so that it won't disrupt your work when you're working with students as well. She also told us how being a counselor is actually a very competitive field. So when she was looking for applicants to become a counselor, more than 100 people applied, and only some of them got the job. She also told us how you have to enjoy your job and have a true passion for it, because if you're in it for the money, it's not worth it, because she told us how you don't actually get a lot of money from being a counselor, so you should do it because you want to, which I totally agree with, because I feel like you should do a job that you enjoy, so it doesn't really feel like a job and more like a hobby, which I think is a good way of thinking of careers. Jo told us how she knew that she wanted to work with people as she wanted to become a psychologist in the first place, but she originally wanted to become a doctor. So this kind of showed us how your careers could easily change. Even though they're in the same field, they could easily change from a psychologist to a counselor, which I can really relate to because I do a mixture of sociology and psychology, and I also did want to become a psychologist, but now I'm thinking of becoming a counselor as well. So her interview was really relatable to me. Some advice that she told us to do was to expose ourselves to as much work experience as possible, especially with work experience where you're working with people, as for counseling you work with people and you communicate with people. So doing this type of work experience like Nightline or V-Team or working with the elderly, any of that is a good work experience if you want to be a counselor. A theory that I believe might be related to Jo is Parsons' 1909 theory of trait and factor approach. I believe this seems to fit Jo, as she believes her personality fits the job she's in. So I think it supports Parsons' theory of how your personality does have an effect on the job that you choose. From this interview, I learned that I should start making opportunities to go outside my comfort zone and get more work experience. As I said in the last slide, I do want to do more work experiences. I feel like since the start of this year, I've only done 1 or 2 voluntary acts with V-Team, and I feel like I should do some more so then I can be more, so then I can have a better understanding of what a job of a counselor is and how to approach and communicate with people. Also, since I'm quite a shy person, I feel like communicating with people is quite difficult for me, so doing a lot of work experience might help me break out of that trait, and it also helped me feel more confident when applying for jobs. So I think out of this interview, out of this module as well, I would do more work experience just to get more experience of both the counseling job and also just more life experience in general. That's it for my oral presentation. Thank you for listening.